Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Writing Tip of the Week. My name is Julie Stigmeyer, and I work with the GSCP in writing support. Today, we're going to talk about developing coherence and cohesion in your writing. Now, what this means is basically how do you write a well-developed and clear body paragraph in your paper? So let's take a look at this. First of all, let's define coherence and cohesion. In the dictionary, these two words are quite similar. They mean the quality of forming a unified whole or the action or fact of forming a united whole. So very similar, right? But in writing, we often differentiate. So coherence refers to how ideas throughout the piece of writing are unified and flow together. And cohesion focuses on more of a basic word and sentence level of flow or unity. So we could think about coherence on the global level throughout the piece of writing and cohesion on the local or specific level between sentences. So here is a strategy to help with coherence to make sure your paragraphs are coming across as clearly and more unified as possible. So in writing support, we like to talk about the meal plan, which was introduced, acronym was introduced by the Thompson Writing Program at Duke University. This basically goes like this. M is the main idea, so MEAL is our acronym, and it stands for main idea. So this is the topic sentence that gives the claim or central purpose to the paragraph. That's going to be your first sentence in the paragraph. Your second sentence, and perhaps more, is going to be evidence. These are examples, quotations, paraphrases that add credibility to your claim. Then you have to analyze that evidence. How does this explain or further support your claim? How does that evidence, how can you analyze that to make sure that the evidence is supporting your claim? And finally, you have your link back to your main idea or your larger claim. So it's similar to the main idea, the first sentence, but it's in a different wording. And I just want to note that if you only wrote 4 sentences in a paragraph, that'd probably be a little short. So oftentimes what actually happens is you have your main idea and your link at the beginning and end, but then this section is beefed up. So maybe you have an evidence and analysis, another evidence and analysis, or maybe each of those take more than one sentence. So now let's look at some samples and see how this works in real life. So here is an example from a book called The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. While it may come naturally for us to think of trust in terms of character, it's equally important that we also learn to think in terms of competence. Think about it. People trust people who make things happen. They give the new curriculum to their most competent instructors. They give the promising projects or sales leads to those who have delivered in the past. Recognizing the role of competence helps us identify and give language to underlying trust issues we can't otherwise put a finger on. From a line leader's perspective, the competence dimension rounds out and helps give trust its harder, more pragmatic edge. So now let's analyze this paragraph. First, we have a good M here. So the idea, first of all, this author is transitioning from the previous section on character and how trust is built through character, and then moves on to this idea of competence, which you can see is then repeated. That key word is repeated throughout the paragraph, a great way to provide that flow or coherence. Then we have, this kind of is another M, it's kind of expanding on that main idea. Then we have 2 examples of evidence, and then some analysis here. And finally ends in a good kind of an L slash, there's a tiny bit of an extra evidence here or example. Now let's look at another example. Most important, we stop inflicting pain on students by demeaning and devaluing their past. This is a quote from Rendon. In this article, Rendon also addresses a lack of guidance from professors on getting Latinx students to verbally express their goals, which is useful for relieving personal anxieties from students who struggle to connect with school leaders. Voice is important in understanding the unique experiences of Latinas and a necessary component for building self-authorship. According to Calais and Cooper, self-authorship helps students build a sense of identity by requiring them to regularly and systematically reflect on their own experiences. Self-authorship bridges students to self-identity. Self-efficacy bridges students to belief in their capability to achieve. Okay, so now let's analyze this paragraph. Well, first of all, as I read this paragraph, I'm really a little lost. I don't feel like I have a good direction. I don't have a good focus. I'm having a hard time understanding the main idea. So I would say there is no M here. You should really avoid beginning and ending your paragraphs with evidence. So there should never be a quote or specific details in your main idea. And why is that? Well, you can't step back and give kind of the broader strokes about what this paragraph is going to be about if you begin with a quotation. So then we have two examples of evidence, then some analysis here, then we have more evidence and a little bit of analysis. But you can see, again, we're lacking that focus. I'm not really, I walk away from this paragraph a little confused as to what the point is. I think there's some great ideas expressed here, and there are some interesting quotations, but I need the writer to help interpret and focus and make this more coherent. So those are just some thoughts on writing meal paragraphs. I encourage you as you're revising to think through your paragraphs and see if you can identify and analyze them. Just check them. Do you have main ideas? Do you have evidence? Do you have sufficient analysis? If you have all of these elements, you're going to have a really great paragraph. That's all for this week's writing tip. Join me next week as we talk more about writing and how to improve yours. Until then, happy writing.